Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Dudan. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Trending Vegas. I'm joined by a portion of the city's communication team, including Natasha Shahani and our very own Jace Radke, who, as you can see, we are all social distancing. So thank you guys for being here. We have a lot to talk about today. First, let's go ahead and talk about the protests, boycotts, everything that's been happening on a national level as well as a local level when it comes to the shooting of Jacob Blake. It got a lot of people's attention, a lot of people reacting, people on both sides. So let's take a look. First, this from Thomas Payne: Clippers Lakers vote to boycott rest of NBA season over Blake shooting. Then from the Blaze, NBA players decide to resume playoffs after a few days of protesting Jacob Blake shooting with boycott. And then we have this from the Golden Knights, basically saying the same thing, that they support their players' decision to sit out a game and to not play, that they are in favor of equality for all against racism. And then we have this one from Governor Sisolak: I stand in solidarity with Las Vegas Aces, athletes across the country, and all those fighting to bring about social justice. I'm proud Nevada started the work necessary to create fairness and change during special sessions this summer and look forward to continuing this effort. We also have this one. The president of the Las Vegas Police Protective Association is expressing his disappointment with the Vegas Golden Knights in response to the team's statement on the shooting of Jacob Blake. So let's go ahead and start in general, guys, with the boycotts and protests in all sports. Natasha, you're a big basketball fan. What did you think about these boycotts or the protests?
I think a good point that got brought up of all of this, on both sides, it was they need to act as players and as men of color and black men to stand up for what they believe in. And then on the other side was, well, they have a platform to use every single day through these games. So I think there was a lot of tension between those two aspects, going back and forth. And I also don't think we're really realizing that for the most part, all of these sports organizations are in bubbles. They cannot leave. They cannot even step outside without being asked to quarantine again. So you talk about really living in one circle and not really knowing what else is going on in the rest of the world. I think that all hit the peak, and hearing all about their shootings, them all trying to make statements, they realized what they were doing wasn't enough, and it wasn't enough to them, and they needed to do something more.
Okay, so Jace, what are your thoughts? What have you been hearing about everything that's going on?
It's just a turbulent time in the country, and if you look at history, we've had similar situations with athletes becoming activists in the past. In 1968, you had Tommy Smith on the medal stand at the Olympics in Mexico City, raising his fist in the air. Before that, in the 1940s, you had Pee Wee Reese on the Brooklyn Dodgers, who went over and put his arm around Jackie Robinson, who was the first African-American player in baseball, at a game in Cincinnati when people were yelling racial slurs at Jackie Robinson. So, I wasn't surprised by it. Certainly everyone in our country has the freedom to protest. It's one of the great freedoms that we have as Americans. And, these athletes today see something that they feel strongly about, and they want to make their voices heard. And likewise, other people through social media are making their voices heard and responding to what they're seeing. So, that's kind of the dialogue that's happening.
Now, I do have to mention, obviously this hit really close to home because our Vegas Golden Knights did the same thing. They boycotted the game in just to show their efforts to not support these police shootings. Of course, that drew a lot of criticism from the local police union that basically said in a letter to Bill Foley, their president said, you need to, before you or your players react, you should really, let's wait for the facts of the case. Before we rush to judgment, let's figure out if the officer was justified or was he not. And so that really led to a big firestorm on social media. A lot of people saying that they would not watch hockey again, that they were against the Golden Knights. How dare they do this? Other people saying, what are you talking about? 7 times shot in the back is just not okay, and the police should know that. they have every right to do what they're doing. So it was a lot of back and forth. We are happy to say that the LVPPA president, as well as Bill Foley, did talk. They said that they had good discussions. But I thought it was interesting, guys, because October 1st was brought into this. And a lot of people on social media were saying, oh, how quickly the Golden Knights have forgotten October 1st. And I would just like to remind everyone that, after October 1st, the Golden Knights were extremely, extremely supportive of our police officers. And for the first year, the first season, they honored a police officer almost every single game. So, I can understand tensions are very, very high. In the end, I think what happened between Bill Foley as well as Steve Grammas from the police union, they talked. And that's really what is important here. We are talking to each other. We are opening the dialogue. So I do see it as a win for the community that dialogue has been opened, at least here in Southern Nevada. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on. And as we know, CCSD started, and well, so did some college classes and colleges going back to campus. And of course, as many people suspected, COVID cases on college campuses, well, they are on the rise. Here are some of the posts. COVID-19 clusters are turning up. This is just one of the many, many college campuses. UNLV has been notified of a confirmed case of COVID-19 on the Maryland Parkway campus. This is the first confirmed case of the fall 2020 semester. That person was asymptomatic but tested positive. And then we have this meme. I think this one is really, really funny. Who's at fault for the major breakouts? The college students partying or universities bringing them back to campus in the first place, right? Which came first, the chicken or the egg type of mentality. And then we have this. It was never safe to reopen at this point. Some classes also aren't fit to be moved online. The right move would have been to suspend this semester until it was safe to reopen. And we have this one, why college campuses will continue to be COVID hotspots. I would have easily risked death to get out of my parents' house and my hometown. So, it really, I am shocked that people are shocked. I don't know if that makes sense. I think we knew that these COVID cases were going to happen. And the question is, do these universities, do they just go to distance learning, or do you cancel the entire semester? I just want to see your all's thoughts on it. Natasha, what are your thoughts?
I see both sides. Some people are struggling with the distance learning, the technology not working, the professors not really being equipped enough yet. Others are being back and forth between in-person and out-of-person, so I think it's super confusing. I know there've been a lot of news stories, especially on the weekends, of following different campuses and what they're doing. But I think it just remains anytime you have a group of people, there's a risk. Do you take that risk? Do you not take that risk? I think that's a decision everybody has to make personally.
I think that the difference with college campuses and this happening on college campuses is that these are adults. These students can make decisions for themselves, so you can decide whether you want to go and risk it or not. And I think that that's the difference between the distance learning we're seeing at CCSD, where the kids don't really have a say, and college kids who are adults and can make their own decisions. Jace, what are you seeing on social?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's their decision to make. I don't know if people are actually shocked or if it's just social media faux shock. I know so many people that are just, I'm going to go on social media and troll and argue about things, and they'll argue both sides of it just to argue, and it's what social has become in a lot of ways, and that's sad. But I think you're right, Melissa, that these adults and these kids going to college, they have the choice to go. The college is open. You don't have to go. I know a lot of people who decided to take the semester off and just work. So there's definitely options out there for people, and everybody has their own choice to make. It's just unfortunate that a lot of people feel like they need to judge people on all their choices.
Yeah, hopefully those numbers will start to go down and Southern Nevada numbers will get even better. Okay, guys, sticking with COVID. Our economy is still hurting from this pandemic. Just recently, MGM laid off 18,000 workers, the majority of those obviously here in Las Vegas. Here's a look at some of the media that we're seeing. This is the start. Wait until airlines and local governments get started. Oh God, this could be a brutal fourth quarter for layoffs. And then we have this one, benefits secured. An agreement covering furloughed MGM and Caesars employees is announced by the Culinary Union, bringing health coverage through March 1st of 2021 and guaranteeing their seniority when they return. So that is nice that those benefits are secured until then. We need to get a handle on our economy. We need to be able to get back to normal as soon as possible. So do you guys know anybody that was furloughed? I know some people that were furloughed, and I have not been able to talk to them about how they feel about these layoffs. But for me, well, the layoffs go to Detroit, New York, I mean, they stretch everywhere.
Yeah.
It makes me scared. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it doesn't make me nervous to know that there are that many people out of work and to not know where our economy is heading. It's frightening.
I know a couple of people who work with the MGM organization who were furloughed. Some of them brought back and some of them not, or their teams shrunk. So like when they did get back, you know, it still wasn't the same, but the expectation of getting everything done is still the same, right? So it's a lot more work on their end. Of course, they're thankful to have a job and be there, but there's still so many people who are furloughed without knowing, will I have a job at the end of this, you know? For the 18,000 people, unfortunately, who were recently laid off, they were furloughed workers hoping to get back, and now this happened. So I think while it is great that people are extending benefits for furloughed employees, there's something looming over them of, will I have a job when this gets back to normal, or will I have to rely on unemployment, which has its own issues, of course, that the government is working through within the state as well.
You know, it is so just disheartening for all those employees that have been laid off. At the same time, I do see glimmers of hope in our economy when you think about Circa opening in just a couple of months, when you think about when you look out the window at City Hall and you see so many construction jobs and construction workers out there continuing in Symphony Park and just building, it just makes me think, okay, there is hope on the horizon. We just have to get to that horizon. Jace, what are you seeing?
Yeah, you know, for those residents who've been here a while, you know, they remember back to 2008 and the Great Recession, and, you know, we had to deal with similar things, although different circumstances today, unprecedented circumstances today, but still, the economy went way down, and we had to deal with that at that time, and Vegas came back stronger than ever. So I think it is disheartening, and it's a lot of people out of work. I do think that there will be a pent-up demand out there for people. Once we get through this pandemic, people are going to want to get out and travel. They're going to want to go do something that isn't their daily being at their house dealing with this pandemic. So, you know, we just need to pull together as a community. And I did see a lot on social media about diversifying the economy, which is something that's always talked about in Southern Nevada, so we're not so gaming and travel dependent. So I'm sure that's something that will probably also be looked at as we come out of this.
Yeah, definitely good points. Hopefully we can come out of this a lot stronger. Okay, guys, our final topic today, and that is the passing of a true superhero, Chadwick Boseman. Here are some of the Twitter feeds. This was the most, correct me, Natasha, the most retweeted or most liked picture?
Most liked tweet of all time.
Of all time. Millions of people liked this.
7.6 million and counting.
So just, you know, social media, I'm sure you all have seen, it's just been flooded with pictures of him and little boys and girls all over the nation just paying tribute to him with their superhero figurines. A beautiful sight to see. I was shocked. He fought colon cancer in silence, all while going to children's hospitals and visiting kids that were dealing with illness as well. One of my takeaways from this, not only was he an incredible man and incredible superhero and just a role model for kids out there, the people in his circle, this was my takeaway, the people in his circle managed to keep his cancer quiet. Those are the kind of people that I want in my life, that they are able to have a circle of trust that strong that nobody sells you out. Everyone respects your decision to fight this in privacy, and I respect that tremendously. Natasha?
I agree. I was, that was like a consistent tweet and post saying like, wow, he had good people. And for so many years, and so many people are talking, I worked with him in the last 4 years, I had no idea. And I think it proves that he was a hero. He's not just a hero because he's the Black Panther. He is a hero because of the things that he did as Chadwick Boseman. And I think just hearing the stories, just make me cry, and then seeing the kids having their memorials with their toys, with the Black Panther and all of the other Marvel superheroes gathered around, I think it hits like 2 points for me were my takeaways. Diversity matters in entertainment.
Absolutely.
When you can see yourself on the screen, it makes a huge difference. And the second, you never know what people are going through, so be kind. That was my biggest thing. You saw media eating him alive over the past few months based on photos and things he's done because of how frail he looked, saying that he was on drugs, that he wasn't taking care of himself. And then he passes away and all of those people are biting their tongue. Just
Absolutely.
Be careful. You never know what people are dealing with.
Jace?
Yeah, I think was the most shocking thing to me was that they kept that so quiet. And that's, usually I'm not fazed by deaths in Hollywood and stuff because, they're up on the screen. I don't know them. But this one got to me a little bit because it was, I think, so shocking. Also, he's almost the same age as me. So, your own mortality comes into play there. But just a great actor, had a lot of great roles, Thurgood Marshall as well as James Brown. And my favorite role was when he played Jackie Robinson in 42. To kind of go back to the start of the show, key figure in our history here. And just, I don't really have words to talk about it. I remember taking my daughters to see that movie, Black Panther, and really enjoying it. And just a great, when you grow up reading comic books, you want to see those heroes on screen. And Marvel and Black Panther did that better than anybody ever has.
Absolutely. And all I can say to close it out is 2020, you can stop now. We have had enough, definitely. Not a lot of happy topics today, but definitely serious topics we needed to talk about. Thank you guys so much for joining us. All right, when we come back, September is Emergency Preparedness Month, so we want to make sure you are prepared, even though it feels like we've been in a state of emergency for the last several months. We've got some tips and help for you coming up.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
Welcome back, everyone. September is National Preparedness Month, and what better person to talk to about tips that we can take home with us than our very own emergency manager, Carolyn Levering. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
So I wanted to have you on not only because it's National Preparedness Month, but also because I think we're in the midst of a pandemic, and I think people tend to lose sight of any natural disaster that could happen along with COVID-19. Would you say that's a normal way of thinking? You kind of put that on the back burner?
Well, certainly in southern Nevada, where we don't have some of the risks and hazards associated with other kinds of hazards in communities that may be experiencing hurricanes or tornadoes, for example. So although our community may not be thinking about other hazards above and beyond the pandemic, certainly emergency preparedness experts like myself and responders around the country are concerned with how we're able to respond and cope with emergencies in addition to the pandemic.
Well, and talk to me a little bit about that, because let's just say, for example, we were to have a major earthquake here. Does that change because we're in the midst of COVID? I mean, does that change how we would react in an emergency?
Well, certainly our responders are still taking those universal precautions. They're protecting themselves with the equipment that they have available to them that they would be using in any kind of medical response. But when it comes time to perform debris management or shelter people and their animals, provide services that clean up the community and put us on the path of recovery, those are things that we have to think through on how we can do it in a safe, effective way that reduces the risk of spreading COVID, in addition to performing the work that needs to be done.
So that's something that your office has had to think about.
Absolutely, yeah, because if we were to have the active monsoon weather that we've had in other summers past, we've been really fortunate. I mean, unfortunate or not, we would like the rain, but we haven't had that kind of monsoon activity that we might have seen in previous years. So we have to be prepared for if we were to have a flood in our community right now during monsoon season, how do we respond to that?
You know, I didn't even think when you talk about the shelter, it didn't even dawn on me that where are you going to put hundreds of people to shelter? How are you going to utilize 6 feet apart? How are you going to maintain distance? That's like an extra level of anxiety for me to think about.
And there are already standards for shelter management for normal disasters. So having to expand upon those standards to create the space needed to prevent the spread of infection, that's the big challenge. We're not able, a shelter that may have been once deemed capacity for 100 people is now deemed capacity for 50. And so that means having to be able to open more than one facility. And that means being able to staff more than one facility. So it becomes a strain on resources, both physical and personnel, that we have to think through.
So what can we do in our homes to prepare for the meantime until emergency responders can respond or we can get the help we need?
Yeah, so we always say, especially during National Preparedness Month, we always say make a kit, be informed. And so understanding what the hazards are in our community and then having a kit to prepare for those hazards is a really important thing to do. And in the midst of a pandemic, and we're still all trying to live our lives. For example, I'm preparing to send my daughter to college, and we talk about having a go bag. And here's the thing, they should always have a go bag, but now we're in a pandemic, it's in a spotlight. Hey, you need a go bag that includes even more supplies than usual in case you have to move out of your dormitory into an isolation unit. Have a go bag to take with you so the supplies you need are there.
And go bags include medication, food, what does it all include?
Yeah, absolutely. So water doesn't necessarily have to be in your go bag because we always talk about 1 gallon of water per person per day. Well, that's pretty hard to carry in a go bag. But you do need to have, especially if you are dependent upon any kind of medication, you need to have some supply of that medication there. But now go bags include thermometers, extra gloves, like exam level gloves, disinfection supplies that maybe your original go bag didn't have as many of those kinds of things, and of course your face covering now. So all of those kinds of things that can go in your go bag, but a traditional go bag is going to have a change of clothes, it's going to have your medications, it's going to have maybe some other emergency supplies, granola bars and snacks. If you have children, your go bag might include toys and games for the kids to keep them occupied, diapers for babies, those sorts of things. Things that you need, essential things you need in an emergency if you have to leave your home.
Okay, so let's move on to, it's still a portion of COVID, but a new contact tracing app just came out. This is not the city's app, correct?
Yeah, no, the city's not. We're not in the business of contact tracing. That's a public health function, and that's why we have a health department.
Now, I know that you know a little bit how this contact tracing app works. So can you just explain it, though, even though it's not our app? How does it work?
Well, I think the important thing for people to understand about contact tracing is why we do it. And the value of contact tracing is to understand if someone has tested positive, knowing who they've had close contact with in the past few days, the period of time in which they were most contagious. That gives us an opportunity to identify those people and test them. And contact tracing in Nevada has identified tens of thousands of people, through contact tracing alone, who didn't even know they were sick. They were asymptomatic, but when they got tested, they found out they were sick. And we were able to prevent them from continuing the spread by having them quarantine until they were no longer contagious. So that's the value and the importance of contact tracing. Now, the app gives us an opportunity to spread that because it's a very human resource dependent function to perform contact tracing. Having the app on your phone makes it possible for us that if we identify someone you may have been in contact with, your phone is able to communicate with other users of the app. And if we're able to identify someone who's positive that has the app, or if you're the one who tests positive, you have the app, it makes contact tracing a lot easier, especially if you have mingled with people that you don't necessarily know, like
Absolutely.
in a grocery store.
Right.
So you could say, well, I went to the grocery store and I may have come into contact with the cashier. I don't remember their name. The bagger, I don't remember their name. So this is an opportunity where people can identify those contacts that they may otherwise overlook or miss entirely.
Right. I do want to say that there have been some questions over privacy and does this tap into people's privacy? There's a lot of information on the app that you can read and decide whether or not this is something you'd like to do for yourself. So, just really interesting how we're going about trying to prevent the spread of COVID. Last thing I want to talk to you about is your CERT training. You guys, this is very important for citizens in the community. Some people don't even know we have it, but you guys have had to change how you do things.
Yeah.
Can you explain what CERT training is and then how you do things now?
Yeah, our Community Emergency Response Team program is federally funded by FEMA. The city has been running this program since 1999, and we have trained many thousands of people on basic emergency preparedness and response capabilities. So the course is a lot of fun, 20 hours of lecture classroom training along with skills-based training. And obviously the in-person classes have to be curtailed somewhat in order for us to, again, mitigate the spread of this infection. So we were forced to kind of think outside the box as far as our programming is concerned. And so we recently filmed our instructors. We have a cadre of instructional staff that are just phenomenal. And it was very challenging for them because they're used to that interaction with people in front of them.
A lot
in
like
an audience.
teachers.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And now they're on a camera talking to a camera. And so it's a little awkward for them, but it gives them the opportunity to convey that information, and we're launching that on a platform so that the instructor is logged in online with the class, right? So it's still synchronous learning, and a chat is going constantly. So as material's being presented and as people have questions, they're able to raise their hand in the chat and get their question answered by a live instructor who's online managing the program. We will have skills-based component to it, but we're going to do it in such a way that all the skills are being done at once instead of spread out over several weeks. And of course, socially distanced spread,
Face
everybody
mask.
in all the protective gear necessary so that they still get that, build that muscle memory of the experience of the skill, but doing it in as safe environment as possible.
It's so important to have this kind of training. You can really help your community in a time of an emergency. So how can people learn? Where can people go to find out about your next CERT program and if they can sign up?
So we're beginning of September, we're launching our very first online offering of this program. So the course is already set up to start. We're really excited for the debut. But people can find our course schedules and offerings for not only the online synchronous learning, but as well as the classroom demonstration skills-based component on our website, nvcert.org, nvcert.org. Our course schedule's up there and they can sign up online. Of course, you do have to have some equipment available and the ability to log into the class and view it, but you don't have to be on camera or anything. You can just take the class as a student and participate in all the sessions, and you can complete the course.
Great opportunity. Carolyn, thank you so much for being here answering all of our questions.
Oh, of course, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, and thank you at home for watching. Remember, you can get in on the conversation. Just follow us at City of Las Vegas and use the hashtag TrendingVegas. We'll see you next time, everyone. Stay safe.